Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. The attorneys are going to confer about some of the exhibits before we get started. So we're going to be in a recess for at least the next 10 minutes, and then I'll check in with them and see where they are. And then we'll come back and I'll call the case and we'll begin. Thank you.
No objection.
With that, then, Ms. Price, will you please begin the announcements? And I would like for each attorney to please prompt their clients to announce.
Yes, Your Honor, Kelly Price for the department through Ona Powell from Belong. Ona, can you please unmute and announce? And I believe that her supervisor, Christy Knopp, is also on the trial.
Yes, Ona Powell, permanency specialist with Belong.
Christy Knopp, permanency supervisor with Belong.
Kathleen Savage, attorney for the respondent mother, Tracy Bushman. We're ready, Your Honor. Ms. Bushman, if you can unmute and announce your name for the record.
While she's trying to figure that out, why don't we continue with the announcements?
Alana Pearsall, attorney for the father, Corey Martin. I'm ready. Corey, can you try to unmute and introduce yourself? And I don't know if you can unmute the parents from your end and help them out.
I can't. All I can do is ask them to unmute.
Anna Swallow, attorney for the interveners, Mr. and Mrs. Ford. Could you unmute and state your name, please? We're ready.
Kristen Ford.
Emily Ford, interveners.
Mr. Martin, tell us your name.
My name is Corey Martin.
Ms. Harris, you're really quiet. I don't know if you can turn up your microphone at all.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
That was better.
I was shouting.
Jill Roden, Tri-County CASA.
We've got a lot of folks here who haven't announced yet, and I need to know what their roles are, if they're witnesses, or they're observing. So if you have a witness here, let's start with the department. Ms. Price, if you could state who that's here in attendance this morning is one of your witnesses, please.
Your Honor, I will be calling Ona Powell, Tracy Bushman, and I believe there's a courtesy worker, but I believe Ms. Savage may have her name, but the courtesy worker that is in San Angelo, I believe, was going to be on.
I'm on. This is Misty Martinez. I'm the courtesy worker.
Thank you. And then I would be calling Misty Martinez.
All right. Ms. Savage, who are your witnesses?
In addition to Ms. Bushman and Ms. Martinez, it is Ms. Potts. She's here.
Hi, I'm Melissa Potts. I work with the Alcohol and Drug Awareness Center of the Concho Valley. I've been working with Tracy as a recovery coach.
Thank you.
Sir, I'm Chelsea Ashton. I'm the clinical director at the Journey Recovery Center, and Ms. Bushman asked me to join her for support and in case I'm needed.
And I am Cicely, the director for Sarah's and Williams House, where Tracy was living at.
Were you called here as a witness today?
Yes.
Yes, Judge, I can go through my witnesses.
Please.
Okay, I have Cicely Matushwa. Pretty good there. She's with the Sober Living House. I have another Cicely Miller. She's from Fresh Start Living House. I plan to call Ona Powell. She's already been stated. Mr. Tristan Ford. I also have Matt Schaefer. I didn't see Matt, though. Is he here?
He's here.
Okay, Matt Schaefer. I have Jennifer Ferguson. She's a MCA for the department. I have Shelly Nix. She was a caseworker on this case. I have Marissa Baldwin. She is a speech therapist for the children, and I plan to also call CASA, as well as Ms. Bushman. And
okay.
Mr. Martin.
And who?
Mr. Martin.
Your Honor, I lost connection for a minute right as Ms. Soleil was about to announce her witnesses, so I didn't get any of those.
Okay, Ms. Swallow, why don't you just repeat your witness list real quick so it's on the record for Ms. Hyman.
Okay, Jill with CASA. Marissa Baldwin with River City Kids. Cecily Matushwa with Sarah's House. Cecily Miller with Fresh Start. Matt Schaefer with the Department of Family and Protective Services. Tracy Bushman, she's the mother. Corey Martin, he's the father. I also have Tristan Ford, he's my client, intervener. I have Ona Powell, she's caseworker. I have Jennifer Ferguson, she's the mobile case aide. And I have Shelly Nix, she is the, she was a caseworker.
Mr. Martin, if you're driving somewhere, I'm going to need you to pull over. We're in court.
No, sir. I'm not driving myself. I'm in the back seat.
I understand, but you're shaking and moving all over the place, and we're in court. You got to get still.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir.
That's all right.
Can you pull over for a second, Dre?
Well, it's going to be longer than a second. We're in court.
Oh,
so
I apologize.
You need to post up somewhere for a little while and let your friend or whoever you're with go about their way. Then that's what you need to do. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Now, there's a person up there. It's Ortiz. Is that department admin?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. The trial was set for today to resume. I'm going to put everybody who I don't need to hear from right now on mute. The department has since filed a motion for transitional monitored return. I discussed this with them in the breakout room, and from a procedural perspective, we need to hear that motion first. It was properly and timely noticed, so it needs to be heard this morning. But I want it to be clear on the record that I am calling the trial, and this motion, after I hear it, may or may not impact us moving forward today. I don't know. I need to hear the evidence. But for all intents and purposes, the trial has been commenced. And we're going to take testimony on this motion. And if we need to get into any further testimony on that, that's all, as far as I'm concerned, trial testimony. So the parties did also discuss exhibits. So for efficiency's sake, let's go ahead and go through the exhibits before we start hearing any testimony. Ms. Price?
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, Ms. Price. I'd like to invoke the rule before we start.
Okay. No, the rule has been invoked then. So before we get into the exhibits, this means the rule is the exclusion of witnesses under the Texas Rules of Evidence. What that means is that if you're a witness to this case, you're being excluded unless you're a material party, a material witness or necessary party to the proceedings. That means I'm going to put you in the waiting room while we go through this case. So the people that can remain are designated parties or actual parties to the case. So the department's going to have to designate who they want to remain in the courtroom. And then every other witness who's not an essential party to the case is going to be put into the waiting room. You may not discuss this case with any other witnesses who are going to testify. That rule will last until this trial is done. So whether we finish today or whether we go to another day, you're subject to the rule, and you may not discuss this case or your testimony with any other witness. Not by text, not by phone, not in person, not through the chat, and you may not watch the YouTube live stream. Do not watch it. I've held people in contempt for violating my rule before. Don't be one of those people. All right. So, Ms. Price, would you designate your witness, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Ona Powell.
All right, then. We've got everybody who's essential, so we can go ahead and begin with that. Ms. Price, you may, I don't know if you guys want to waive argument on your motion, but we still need to get into the exhibits. Let's start with those first.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I share my screen?
Let me enable it, and yes, you may.
And I apologize. This is my first Zoom trial, so hopefully I get this correct. This should be Petitioner's Exhibit 1 showing.
Okay.
And it is the family plan of service for Ms. Tracy Bushman.
And Judge, I don't know if we've all agreed to all of our exhibits. Do we need to go through every single one?
No, I think what you can do is just list them, Ms. Price.
Perfect.
Everybody can just list their exhibits, and then I'll take up any objections that might exist.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Your Honor. Petitioner's Exhibit 1 is the family plan of service for Ms. Tracy Bushman that was filed with the court on February 1st of 2023. Petitioner's Exhibit 2 are the hair substance abuse 5-panel drug test for Ms. Tracy Bushman that the results are dated 5/4 of 2024. And Petitioner's 3 is the 9-panel urine drug testing collected from Ms. Tracy Bushman, results of 5/4 2024. And that concludes my exhibits, Your Honor.
For the motion.
Yes. And for the motion and as necessary for the trial as well.
Okay. All right, then, Ms. Savage, your exhibits?
Exhibit 1 is Ms. Bushman's certificates of completion. Exhibit 2 is her certificate of completion for her vape class from March of 2024. Exhibit 3 is her April of 2024 therapy note. Exhibit 4 are medical records from James while he was with his mother. Exhibit 5 is medical records for while she was placed with her mother. Exhibit 6 is a letter from Jameson's doctor. Exhibit 7 is a letter from Jasmine's doctor. Exhibit 8 is Ms. Bushman's most recent NA meeting sheet login. And Exhibit 9 is Ms. Bushman's updated monthly budget. And that concludes our exhibits, Your Honor.
Ms. Pearsall?
I have no objections, Your Honor. I apologize. I had a knock on my door. I had to answer, but I was listening and I have no objections.
And do you have any exhibits?
I did not, Your Honor.
Ms. Harris?
I have no exhibits other than what the other parties are producing.
Ms. Swallow?
Thank you, Judge. I have Exhibit 1 is Tracy Bushman's return of service. Exhibit 2 is Corey Martin's return of service. Exhibit 3 is Tracy Bushman's family plan of service. Exhibit 4 is Corey Martin's family plan of service. Exhibit 5 is Jasmine's birth records. Exhibit 6 is Jameson's birth records.
Hang on just a second. Jasmine, 5, and Jameson, birth record 6.
Exhibit 7 is the Miss Bushman's file from Sarah's house. Exhibit 8 is acknowledgement of Miss Bushman for use of meth. Exhibit 9 is acknowledgement by Miss Bushman for use of meth. Exhibit 10 is Miss Bushman's OSAR from January 4th, 2023. Exhibit 11 are Jasmine's pulmonologist records. Exhibit 12 are Jameson's pulmonologist records. Exhibit 13 is the safety plan dated December 20th, 2022. Exhibit 14 are Tracy Bushman's therapy notes from February 2024. Exhibit 15 is a Facebook photo. Exhibit 16 is placement paperwork for Jasmine. Exhibit 17 is placement paperwork for Jameson. Exhibit 18 is a nail test for Tracy Bushman dated February 27th, 2024. Exhibit 19 is a swallow test for Jasmine of January 2024. Exhibit 20 is a swallow test for Jameson from January 2024. And Exhibit 21 is Ms. Tracy Bushman's psychosocial evaluation from Patricia Boone dated January 2024.
Okay. All right, let's go through. Are there any objections to any of the state's exhibits?
No objections.
No, Judge.
No, Your Honor.
No objections.
Any objections to Ms. Savage's exhibits?
No objections.
No,
No
Judge.
objections.
Any objections to Ms. Swallow's exhibits?
No, Your Honor.
No objections.
No, Judge.
Then states exhibits 1, 2 through 23 are admitted. Do the parties waive opening as far as the motion?
Yes, Judge.
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes,
All
Your
right,
Honor.
Ms. Price, you may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I will call Ona Powell of Belong. What is your, can you describe what is your position? What is your title at Belong?
I'm a permanency specialist, legal caseworker. So I follow the parents, ensure that they're getting their services done, set up services, and provide support for parents and caregivers.
And how long have you been in that position?
A little over a year.
And where were you working prior to that?
Prior to, well, I've had a few jobs, but prior to being a permanency specialist, I was an investigator for Region 3, Dallas County, for DFPS.
What did you, at what point were you assigned to this case?
I was assigned to this case at the end of July. It transferred back to our county.
And by our county, do you mean Medina County?
Medina County, I'm sorry, yes.
And you said it was transferred to your county. What county was it in previously?
It was being handled by Shelly Nix, who was out of, I believe, Comal. She was handling the case. And once I came out of training, the case was assigned to me.
How long were you in training before you became case assignable?
A little over 4.5 months.
And what kinds of topics and do you learn about in your training?
Of course, reviews, signs and safety, abuse, family plans of services, things like that.
Are you required to have a degree to be a permanency specialist at Belong?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is your degree in?
My undergraduate is in history, and I'm currently a master's student in the same.
What are you studying in your master's?
History.
History. And how long have you been in the child welfare field?
Since 2016.
Okay. And when you were assigned this case, where was it in the process? Had a family plan of service already been done for Ms. Bushman?
Yes.
And you said it was in July of 2023 that you were assigned the case?
Yes, ma'am.
Please tell me, where was the case at that time in terms of Ms. Bushman's compliance, and just kind of set the background for where the case was when you were assigned?
When I was assigned, Ms. Bushman was already in her working her services, and she was in compliance. I came into the case right before they started doing the longer visits with her, before they started transitioning her to overnight visits.
Okay. The family plan of service has already been admitted into evidence, and this was the one that was dated February 1st, 2023. Was that created before you were employed at Belong?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you since reviewed that document?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I share my screen at this time?
Okay.
Ms. Powell, I'm sharing what is entered as Petitioner's Exhibit 1. It's the family plan of service that was filed 2/1/2023. And you said, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
And I am going to scroll down, and I apologize to everybody for the dizziness this may create as I scroll down. I'm going to scroll down to the strengths and needs portion for Ms. Bushman. Can you explain how does Belong determine what are the strengths and what are the needs to create an individual family plan of service for a parent?
By interviewing the parents in depth. That's typically how we come up with these plans. It's speaking with the parents and observing the parents, and we use that information to essentially assess whether or not there's strengths or weaknesses for the parents.
And is there a specific tool or assessment that Belong utilizes to do so?
We use a dashboard called Impact, and essentially it gives us a list it defines what can be considered a strength or a weakness, but it's mostly off of our own observations and speaking with the parents. And
correct me if I'm wrong, when you create a service plan, are there requirements that a service plan has to be specific for that parent? Am I correct? Like, you can't just put the same services on every plan. Is that fair to say?
That is correct.
On Ms. Bushman's family plan of service, under the heading of intimate partner violence, it says strengths or no needs identified. What does that mean?
That means that she was in a relationship where there was no domestic violence between her and her partner.
So is this a case in which you identified that domestic violence has not ever been an issue or is not an issue currently for Ms. Bushman?
Correct.
As to other adult household relationships, there was no strength, or I'm sorry, this was identified as a strength or no needs identified. And how did how was this conclusion come to?
By speaking with the people in the home that she lives with and Ms. Bushman herself.
At this point, do you have any current concerns that Ms. Bushman has issues with intimate partner violence or a lack of other adult household relationships?
No, I don't have a concern.
As to Ms. Bushman's physical health, it was noted as a strength, no needs identified. Has that changed for you during the course of this case?
No, it is not.
As to Ms. Bushman's cognitive abilities, it has been noted as a strength or no needs identified. Has that changed for you during the course of this case?
No, it is not.
Thank you. So would you agree that those were all issues that might come up in a case, but that has not come up for Ms. Bushman?
Correct.
Now, getting to where Belong did identify some needs, would you agree that the biggest need was Ms. Bushman's methamphetamine use?
Correct.
And explain to me what your understanding of Ms. Bushman's substance abuse history was.
Ms. Bushman had a lengthy history of abusing methamphetamines. And at the time of her pregnancy, she used, and the children were, one child, I believe it was Jameson, tested positive for methamphetamine, as well as Ms. Bushman herself at the time of the delivery.
And are you aware that perhaps both twins later tested positive on their meconium?
The investigator, the meconium wasn't included in the case file, but I believe in going back through the investigation, I'm uncertain whether or not
that's fine.
Meconium was positive or negative.
But it was your understanding that Ms. Bushman did indeed admit to methamphetamine use during her pregnancy?
Correct.
So when you identify methamphetamine abuse as a need, what types of services does Belong recommend in order to mitigate the dangers of methamphetamine use? And actually, time out. I'm going to actually ask a different question and I'll come back to that one. What are your understanding of the dangers of methamphetamine use while pregnant and when caring for newborns?
There's obviously a risk of danger both during the pregnancy and after the pregnancy. There could be a risk of birth defects or long-term effects that present after the birth. And it puts both mother and children at risk when using while pregnant. And the children would be at risk after birth if mom is using while caring for the children. It could put them in harm's way in a situation where they can't handle a situation that's outside of their cognitive developmental stage.
And for newborns, their cognitive and developmental stage is that they rely on the caregiver for every one of their needs. Is that safe to say?
Yes.
And did you come to those conclusions as to the dangers and risks of methamphetamine use through your training and experience through Belong and the department?
Yes.
Given the dangers and risks involved in methamphetamine use, what services did Belong identify as being designed to mitigate those dangers and risks?
She was asked to submit to an OSAR assessment. The recommendation was inpatient drug rehab. We asked for random drug testing. And I believe with her services, it was inpatient that was recommended for her. I'm going to backpedal just a little bit and ask a couple of questions about Ms. Bushman's pregnancy. I understand you weren't the investigator, so if you don't know the answers to them, then just say so. In addition to the admission of methamphetamine use, are you aware whether Ms. Bushman had any other difficulties or complications during her pregnancy? From what I understand, Ms. Bushman had gestational diabetes during the pregnancy.
And did she also is she also a smoker, or was she a smoker?
She was a smoker during her pregnancy.
And do you have an understanding as to whether those things can also cause complications in a pregnancy?
Yes, they can.
And also, how old is Ms. Bushman?
I believe Ms. Bushman is 38, 39.
Okay. And so she had a twin pregnancy in her late 30s?
Yes.
And then there's no way to say this in a way that's with tact, but Ms. Bushman is also overweight. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
And do you have any knowledge as to whether that can also cause issues in a twin pregnancy, in an older woman in their upper 30s?
It can.
Now we're going to go back to the family plan of support or family plan of service. Did Ms. Bushman attend her OSAR as ordered by the court?
Yes, she did.
Do you remember what the recommendations from her OSAR was?
She was referred to Journey Recovery Center for inpatient treatment and detox.
And was that treatment also court-ordered as well?
I believe so.
And do you know whether she successfully completed that treatment? Did she enter that treatment and successfully complete?
Yes, she successfully completed on April 5th of 2023.
And what was her aftercare from inpatient, like after she finished that inpatient treatment?
She entered into an outpatient treatment program, which she completed on August 1st of 2023.
And where was she living upon discharge from the inpatient services?
When I came on the case, she was in Sarah's house.
And what is Sarah's house?
It's a sober living home.
And what is a sober living home?
Sober living home, it provides additional scaffolding for people leaving inpatient rehab.
Can you explain what you mean by scaffolding?
Support.
And why is that kind of support needed for somebody who has a lengthy history of substance abuse?
It's needed. It's a part of the, what's the word? It would be a part of her recovery plan to help prevent relapses and to help her gain stability.
And were there any other services provided to Ms. Bushman through either the inpatient facility or Sarah's house that she was in afterwards?
Parenting classes. She attended parenting classes while at Journeys.
And did she successfully complete that as part of her treatment plan?
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
And we're going to come back to Sarah's house in a moment, but was there any other part of her the needs identified having to do with her methamphetamine abuse? Were there any other services that were required of Ms. Bushman?
Random drug testing.
And has she complied with the random drug testing through the time that you've had the case?
Yes, she has.
Now, I believe it's been entered as part of Ms. Swallow's exhibits, but there was a nail test that she was sent for a few months ago. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe it was also testified about probably at a prior hearing that I was not a part of. What was the result of that nail test, if you recall?
It was a positive result with a level of 228.
And did Ms. Bushman admit to a relapse at that time?
No, ma'am, she denied use.
And when was she sent for that? Do you recall the date that that test was done? If you don't recall, it's fine. It's in the
I set the test up for February 27th. I believe she went down on the 27th or the 28th to take the test.
And that's February of 2024.
Of 2024, I'm sorry.
And has she tested for you since then?
Yes, she has.
What was the most recent test that you sent her for?
On 5/3, I believe she completed the test on the 4th of May of this year, and it was a hair and urine test, and both were negative.
And those have been, for the record, entered as Petitioner's Exhibit 2, which I am showing on the screen currently, and Petitioner's Exhibit 3. In addition to the random drug testing, was she also required to attend anything like AA or NA or any other aftercare following completion of an outpatient program?
She attends NA.
And do you know how regularly she attends?
Weekly or as needed.
And was that a court order, or is that something that she's doing on her own?
I believe it's a part of her recovery plan.
Okay. Going now back to the plan of service regarding her resource management and basic needs. At the time that the family plan of service was created, Ms. Bushman was entirely financially dependent on Mr. Martin and did not have a job. she also had some trouble with some transportation. Has that changed since then? And what is your understanding of her resource management and basic needs at this point?
It has changed. Miss Bushman is currently employed. She works 2 part-time jobs. She has a car and her own home. So she's relying only on it. She's independent. She's no longer relying on Corey Martin for her basic needs.
How does she, you said that she has 2 jobs. Do you know where she's working?
She's currently working at Slotsky's Deli and Marietta Cafe.
And what does she do at each of those?
Slotsky's Deli, I believe she works the line, and at Marietta Cafe, she is a dishwasher.
How does she pay for, if you know her, what you said she has her own home. What type of home does she have?
She has a 2-bedroom apartment.
And how does she pay for her rent and utilities?
She's utilizing a Section 8 voucher program, and they pay half of her rent, and she pays an additional amount if needed.
To your knowledge, has she availed herself of other supports in the community, like Section 8 housing or other programs that might be available to her?
Yes, she has.
And can you tell me what those are?
Yes, she currently, she works with the child advocacy in San Angelo. They help her with diapers or anything else she may need for the children, including safety. I don't want to say rigging, but the child's safety instruments that she uses in the house. She also has a recovery coach who can help her if she needs transportation. Ms. Bushman also knows how to utilize the state system, whether it's Medicaid, food stamps. She's aware of how to do all of that, and she uses community resources as needed.
So would you say that for resource management and basic needs, is this still identified as a need for her, or is this now a strength or no needs identified?
It's now a strength.
Her required actions regarding regarding her resource management was to transition to the sober living residence when she was discharged, and to remain in the San Angelo area and have a safe and stable place to live, and would be able to work and become financially independent. At this point, do you believe that she has met those requirements?
She has.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the sober living residence. I believe that at a prior hearing, there had been an issue where she was no longer allowed to be in that sober living residence. Are you aware of that, and are you able to speak on it?
Yes, I'm aware.
Now, my understanding is that at the time, the children had been in a monitored return with her at the sober living residence. Is that correct?
Yes.
When were they placed with her at the sober living residence?
October 3rd of 2023.
And how long were they placed with her there?
A little bit over 2 months.
And what was the reason that the children were subsequently removed from that monitored return?
She was evicted from the sober living home for not following directions.
And do you know specifically what those directions were that she did not follow?
She was tasked with keeping her room clean, tasked with chores, and not smoking or vaping within the facility.
And when you say smoking or vaping, are you talking about tobacco, or are you talking about marijuana or other substances?
I'm talking about tobacco.
And Ms. Bushman is a longtime tobacco user as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Regarding the cleanliness of her room, can you tell me more about that and what the concerns were with the cleanliness of her room?
The concerns were that she was not cleaning the room. She had the children housed in the room with her, and she was no longer picking up after herself, as asked by the house manager.
And were you able to see the state of the room that the complaints were? Did you have any personal knowledge of what the room looked like at the time?
Yes, I'd been in the sober living home. I observed the room, and the times that I observed the room, it was clean and it was safety. It was safe for the children. The times that I viewed the room.
And is it possible that the room had deteriorated from the time that you had seen it until the time that Sarah's house evicted her?
It is possible.
Okay. Is it safe to say that Ms. Bushman is at least capable of maintaining a clean and hazard-free home?
Yes, she is.
Have you had the opportunity to speak with her as to how or why the room may have deteriorated or why she wasn't cleaning to their expectations?
Yes.
And what was her response?
She stopped taking her Abilify.
What is
And
Abilify, if you know?
Abilify for Ms. Bushman is used for her bipolar depression. And she stopped taking the Abilify for whatever reason. She stopped taking the Abilify, and one thing about that, she lacked the motivation. And she began to let the cleanliness of the room slide.
Is this currently an issue for her, or has she since addressed it?
She's since addressed it, and she is back on her Abilify.
And do you know how long she's been on the Abilify?
She's been on Abilify since the onstart of the case.
I'm sorry, when she stopped taking it, do you know when she started resuming again?
She resumed after being evicted from the sober living home. After we removed the children.
Have you had the opportunity to view where she's currently living?
I've done a virtual walkthrough due to distance. I've done a virtual walkthrough twice through the apartment.
And what do you mean by virtual walkthrough?
We met on Teams so that I could see the home.
And so that means she's like walking through with her camera?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you able to see most or almost all of the apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you describe it for the record?
Yes, the apartment is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. The children have the master bedroom with 2 cribs. Ms. Bushman has a smaller bedroom. It has a small galley kitchen. And it is in the process of being furnished right now. I believe she just has a couch and a table in the front room. The children's cribs are put up. Ms. Bushman has a bed for herself. It's a pretty basic apartment setup, and it was clean during both viewings.
Do you know whether she has taken steps to baby-proof the apartment?
Yes, she has, and she walked me through what she's baby-proof.
And can you describe what those are?
Yes, she has doorknob handles, which that was a bit of a tricky thing with the doorknob handles for her. She has latches on the cabinets, the drawers. She has latches on the kitchen cabinets, so that the children can't get into any of the doors of the cabinets. She has door latches as well that lock and prevent them from opening the door. And I believe she has the covers for the light fixtures.
Do you know whether she has the electric plug covers as well?
I believe she does. If she doesn't have them, I can get them for her.
Okay. And how old are the children at this point?
I believe we're rounding out 17 months, just shy of 18 months, 17 months.
And what is their mobility at this point?
They are very mobile. They're very active. They're walking.
Is there anything that you saw in Ms. Bushman's apartment that you felt was a physical safety hazard for the children at this time?
Nothing to be of much alarm, but I would like for her to get a gate for the kitchen as well as a refrigerator lock. And I've discussed additional child safety measures with her. Okay.
Do you believe that the lack of the gate or refrigerator lock should prevent the children transitioning back with her at this time?
No, ma'am. It's something that can be mitigated relatively easily.
So as far as the resource management, do you believe that this is something that she has completed and that you would ask the court to accept as complete regarding her court-ordered services?
Yes, ma'am.
The next need that was identified was her parenting skills. The observations were that Ms. Bushman appeared to be overwhelmed with the children. Now, of course, this was written at a point when the children were only a few months old. Did you ever observe Ms. Bushman to appear overwhelmed in caring for the children?
Not in my presence.
And how many times did you have the opportunity to observe Ms. Bushman in person interacting with the children?
Whenever I supervised visits for her, so it's been quite a few visits dating from last year.
Would you say more than 5?
It's been more than 5, yes.
More than 10?
I don't know if it's more than 5, maybe less than 10.
Okay. Now, at the time that you started observing these visits, how old were the children?
They were just shy of a year old.
Okay.
So they were maybe 8 months. I'm sorry.
Do you believe that it was quite possible that she was overwhelmed when they were much younger and maybe less overwhelmed by the time you were observing her with them?
Correct.
So the concerns that were noted in the service plan was that Ms. Bushman herself seemed concerned that she could not manage the children with feeding, diapering, holding entirely on her own. Is that the experience that you've had observing her?
Not recently.
Can you talk about the most recent visit that you observed with Ms. Bushman and the children?
Yes, the most recent visit would have been on the 29th of April. Ms. Bushman was able to feed both children and to care for both children. She did ask me to help her, and that was the issue with getting the children to the bathroom, taking them one at a time. But other than that, she handled the entire care for the children for the entire visit by herself.
Where was that visit located at?
It was at the McDonald's in Junction, Texas.
My understanding is that there was a complaint that Ms. Bushman does not properly provide food and snacks when the visits do not take place at a restaurant. Are you aware of that concern?
Yes, I am.
And how has it been addressed? Has it been addressed? And if so, how?
Yes, I addressed it by having a conversation with Ms. Bushman and advising that even if she believes that the children have eaten prior to the visit, she still needs to supply snacks, as it is a 2-hour visit and they're small children with fast metabolisms. So that was addressed with her. Once that was addressed with her, she understood that that's a requirement, that we want her to do that. So we haven't had an issue with that again. It was a one-time thing with the roll of crackers.
And at what point did that visit where she only brought the roll of crackers, when was that visit, if you know?
I cannot remember the exact date of the visit, but I believe it might have occurred in March.
So a couple of months ago?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Her required actions were to engage and successfully complete the parenting class on early childhood development. Did she provide you with a certificate of completion for that?
Yes, she has.
More importantly, have you been able to observe that she seems to be putting into practice what she's learned?
I have. I've watched her take baby steps, and she's been consistent with trying, with demonstrating.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Can you give 2 examples of things that she struggled with previously that she's now doing better with in terms of parenting?
She struggled with initially bringing enough supplies to the visits, not diapers, but mostly the snacks and activities for the children. She struggled with being able to hold both children, whether they have to go to the bathroom, particularly when it was time to take them to be changed. I addressed that with her and told her, perhaps, you need to come up with a way where you can manage it when there's no other person with you. Maybe perhaps bringing a stroller. She did explain to me why she doesn't bring the stroller, and she at the time cannot afford a wagon for the children. So those are the main 2 things. And since
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm going to object to narrative. Ms. Price was pretty specific on just giving 2 examples, and I feel like we're kind of going off track here.
Sustained.
Ms. Powell, thank you. I'll actually move on to the next one. Would you ask the court to accept that Ms. Bushman has successfully completed the requirement for parenting classes?
Yes.
As to the substance abuse use, would you agree that this was the main concern identified in the family plan of service?
Yes.
And this is due to her admissions of using drugs while pregnant. Are you aware of how long she has had substance abuse, that she has dealt with addiction?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long would you say that she's discussed that has been for her?
I was under it's about 2012 that it's been over a decade.
As identified in the initial family plan of service, she had already completed her OSAR. This case had begun in a family-based court-ordered services case. Is that correct?
Correct.
And she had done that initial OSAR assessment through a family-based worker in that case. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding.
And her requirements were then to complete the substance abuse assessment and then to engage and complete in the recommended level of treatment, to fully engage and participate in those programs until she was successfully discharged, including following provider recommendations for additional services. Do you believe that she has complied with this requirement?
Yes, she has.
And would you ask the court to accept her completion of this requirement?
Yes.
With the positive nail test that took place a couple of months ago, do you have like what was your reaction to that positive test?
I was shocked, but because
Why
she
were you
denied,
shocked?
because all of her other tests had been negative.
And when you talked to her about it, what was her reaction?
Asked and answered.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was Ms. Bushman's reaction when you discussed the positive test with her?
She was surprised that it came back positive.
I don't think she asked that particular question before overruled.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Powell, when there's an objection, make sure you wait until the judge has a chance to rule before you answer. And I was trying to just clarify my question. I apologize. Have you since sent her for another, we already established that you since sent her for another drug test. This time was hair and urine. Is there a reason why a nail test was not done subsequently?
Yes, ma'am. She didn't have enough nails for the test.
And what does enough nails mean? Is it by length or how is that determined?
By length, she didn't have enough for the specimen, to provide a specimen.
Do you know that because you spoke to Ms. Bushman or because you know that from the facility?
The facility. I had a conversation with a young lady at the facility who.
To hearsay, Judge, as far as that goes. Hearsay as far as Ms. Powell talking to the facility that allegedly did the drug test or told her whatever they told her. Hearsay.
Well, I think what she's answered so far is probably as far as she can go with that. So I'll sustain the hearsay to ask any other part of that conversation.
Yes, Your Honor. Given that her most recent drug tests were negative, are you asking the court to accept that she has complied with the requirement to remain to achieve sobriety in this case?
Yes.
As to her coping skills and mental health, you indicated and discussed already her bipolar diagnosis and also that she is prescribed Abilify. She additionally was supposed to take a psychosocial assessment. Did she comply with that requirement?
Yes, she has.
And were there any specific recommendations from that psychosocial?
To continue with individual therapy.
And did she do individual therapy?
Yes, she's still undergoing individual therapy.
Who is her provider?
Trisha Boone.
And I believe that Ms. Boone's most recent therapy notes are already entered into evidence. What is your understanding of Ms. Boone's recommendation?
Continued therapy and to work towards stability.
In those most recent therapy notes, there was noted, and I'm actually going to take my screen share off for a second because I'm going to not talk about necessarily the plan of service, but speaking specifically about the therapy notes. Ms. Bushman had indicated and it was in those therapy notes that have been entered, that the children appear healthy, that there's notes that indicate that she may not believe that the children have the chronic lung disease. First of all, can we switch gears and can you tell me what you understand about the children's medical needs having to do with their lungs?
From what I understand, the children have chronic lung disease and they're susceptible to respiratory infections and ear infections.
Ear infections as well, is that what you said?
Yes.
When was the last time that they had any type of lung infection?
As of recent, well, they have COVID, I believe, right now. But the last time, I don't recall, since I've had the case, they did have RSV at the beginning of the case. A few issues.
And RSV is an upper respiratory virus. Is that your understanding?
That is.
Were they hospitalized for that, if you know?
I believe they were.
Do the children, are they required to be on oxygen?
No, they're not.
Do they require breathing treatments?
Yes, as needed.
As needed? And do they take oral medications for their lungs, or is it just breathing treatments?
From what I understand, it's just breathing treatments.
Okay. Do you share the concern that Ms. Bushman minimizes the children's medical needs?
That has been a concern.
Discuss that a little bit more. What particularly is your concern with regards to Ms. Bushman and how she views the children's medical needs?
I believe it may be guilt, but that's just my personal opinion, guilt for smoking during her pregnancy and things like that, that get in her way of fully understanding that the children do have medical needs.
Has she indicated a plan to you to get them in with a doctor in her area?
Yes, ma'am. If the children are returned, they'll be going back to Dr. Riley, and she has stated that she will set up the appointments for the pulmonologist, that she'll get those recommendations from those referrals, from Dr. Riley to get them pulmonologists in the area.
With the concern that she doesn't fully appreciate the children's lung needs, do you believe that she will at least follow the recommendations and suggestions of the medical provider she identifies in the area?
Yes, I do.
The most recent therapy notes had also indicated, actually scratch that because I don't have them in front of me, and so I don't want to misstate them. Going back to her family plan of service, as social support systems in the non-household, is that a strength for her now, or is that still a need?
It is a strength for her now.
And who are the non-household members that she has set up or identified as supports for her?
Her sister, people that she's met in her programs, her sponsors, and her recovery coach.
Would you ask the court to accept that she's complied with that requirement?
Yes.
Ms. Powell, at the last time you all came to court, Ms. Bushman, through her attorney, had asked for a monitored return at that time. Is that correct?
Correct.
What was your position? And by your, I mean Belong. What was Belong's position at the time?
That the children not be returned because she needs more time to demonstrate her parenting skills to us.
What has changed between then and now?
She's demonstrating consistent effort to parent her children. Any suggestions that we give her, she's taking those suggestions and she's trying to improve upon her parenting skills and to demonstrate to us that a willingness to parent her children.
And can you give a specific example of one of the things that you as Belong have told her she needs to do that she has since done?
I explained to her that I needed her to, of course, back to the snacks, that she needed to bring activities for the children to do. You know, they're one, that she needs activities and snacks to be brought to the visits, and that she needs to try to handle the children on her own without asking for help unless she really needs it. And not to depend so much on whoever's observing the visit. Since then, she's demonstrated, other than asking me one time, which it was busy and I understood, she's demonstrated consistently that she has this willingness and she does incorporate my suggestions into her parenting.
When you observe her visiting with the children, do you observe a bond between them and her?
Yes, I do.
And can you describe that?
The children, well, when she comes, they know her voice, they know her face, they reach for her. She has a bond with her children. They know her. They react to her. They listen to her as much as a 1-year-old can listen to anyone. And it's clear that she has a bond with her children. She's very delicate with them. She's very patient with them. And I do believe she loves her children.
Ms. Powell, what is the purpose of this entire process? And by this process, I mean the conservatorship process. What is the goal and what is the purpose?
Our goal initially is always to reunify our families. to reunify parents and children. And the purpose is for Ms. Bushman, in her case, to gain sobriety and the parenting skills that she needs, that she'll need throughout their young lives, throughout the time until they're 18. So in my opinion, this was the time for her to learn those skills and to implement those skills so that she's trusted once the department is out of the picture.
Is Ms. Bushman an ideal parent?
No, she's not.
Do you believe that her rights should be terminated at this time?
No, I do not.
Why is Belong asking for a transition monitored return at this time?
So that we can further observe her demonstrate her parenting skills, the newfound skills. So essentially more time so that we can observe her.
And so is the plan to start with a shorter unsupervised and then move to longer unsupervised before the children are then placed in her care?
Yes.
And is the plan to then monitor for the full amount of time allowed by the law?
Yes.
And do you believe that that is in the children's best interest at this time?
Yes.
I feel like there's a couple of things I forgot, and I'm going to ask you to discuss anything that I may have forgotten in a second. But I believe that the court additionally had ordered, this was not in her original plan of service, but the court had additionally ordered her to complete a smoking cessation class and also a class that discusses the effects of smoking on babies in utero. Am I correct in that?
Correct.
And do you know whether she completed those?
She has.
And do you know whether she has made attempts to quit smoking or reductions in her use?
Reductions in use. I believe she's vaping. I don't believe she smokes tobacco anymore, but I do believe that she's stepping down using vaping.
And have you discussed with her that even vaping, given the children's lung needs, that she cannot do that around the children?
Correct, yes.
And do you believe she understands that requirement?
I do believe she understands it.
There were also some concerns regarding her driver's license and whether her car was properly registered. Can you describe what those concerns are and whether they've been since rectified?
They've been since rectified. Originally, her license was suspended. She's now gotten her license has been reinstated, and her car is properly registered with the state of Texas and insured.
Is there any other requirements or concerns that I have forgotten to ask you about that you believe the court needs to be made aware of at this time?
Not at this time. I think we've covered.
Your Honor, at this time, I pass the witness.
All right, let's take a quick 5-minute recess. Let's be back at 11:10. State had just passed the witness and Miss Ona Powell's direct. So Miss Savage, it is now your cross.
Miss Powell, I know you got this case in July, but what has been your interactions with Miss Bushman? Has she been cooperative and communicative with Belong?
Yes, she has.
Okay. And all the services Belong has asked her to engage in complete, she's been willing to do?
Yes.
Okay. And whenever you've inquired with her about any issues, the vaping or drug use, has she been open and honest with you?
Yes, she has.
And has that been your experience with her in regards to other investigators and Belong workers as well, that she's been open and honest with them as well?
Yes.
Okay. You testified that she completed her inpatient rehab back on April 5th of last year?
Yes.
Okay, so it's been over a year that she's done that. And then after completion, she went to a sober living home?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that at that living home that they would weekly drug test them randomly?
Correct.
Okay. And is it your understanding that if she had ever tested positive, she would have been kicked out of the home?
Yes.
Okay. So since April 5th, 2023, you haven't had any reason to believe that Miss Bushman was using other than the positive nail test, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And going back to that nail test, do you recall that the cutoff on those nail tests are 100, the level of 100?
Yes.
Okay. And you, as you testified, Miss Bushman's level was 228. So that's a pretty low level. Would you agree?
Correct.
And is it your understanding that nail tests go back significantly longer than hair tests or UAs?
Correct.
Okay. But during any of your interactions with Miss Bushman, have you ever suspected that she's or that she was using meth again?
No, I haven't.
Okay. And in regards to when the children had to be re-removed, it wasn't because Belong suspected she was using meth. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. When she was at Sarah's home, and she was asked to leave after the vaping incident, there were some reports in regards to her with the children. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you recall that they reported she was either not bathing the children every day or bathing them in the sink?
Correct.
Okay. But there was no actual like safety concerns for the children when they were placed back with Miss Bushman. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And did you address that issue with Miss Bushman after you were made aware of it?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you believe Miss Bushman's rights should be terminated because she was bathing her infant children in a kitchen sink?
No.
Okay. It's been testified to or remarked that Miss Bushman minimizes her children's medical conditions. But when the children were placed with Miss Bushman, she was taking them to the doctor regularly. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. In the 2.5 months that she had Jameson and Jasmine, she had taken Jameson to the doctor 8 times, including a swallow study.
Correct.
And she had set him up with a speech therapist.
Correct.
Okay. And then for Jasmine, she had taken her 4 different times and had scheduled a swallow study to be completed on her. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you do have those medical notes that Miss Bushman has provided, the medical records from when the children are with her. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And those have been admitted as respondent mothers exhibit 4 and 5? Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Here we go. Ms. Powell, these are the medical records for Jameson, and this is from his swallow study that was done while he was in the care of his mother on December 1st of 2023. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the impression from the swallow study by this doctor was that there was episodes of flash laryngeal penetration with no aspiration. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And on the side here, you see the different dates that Miss Bushman took him to the doctor. So we have October 12th, which would have been about a week after he was placed with Miss Bushman. Is that correct?
Correct.
November 9th, November 10th, November 13th, November 22nd, November 30th, the swallow study on December 1st, and then an office visit, follow-up office visit on December 8th, correct? Sorry, I'm sorry, Ms. Powell, are those dates correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then for Jasmine, which have been admitted as respondent mothers exhibit 5, she was also taken to the doctor November 9th, November 10th, November 13th, and December 8th. And the November 10th and November 13th, that would have been right around the time the children turned 1. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So Ms. Bushman was meeting the medical needs of her children. Would you agree?
I agree.
And she was making sure that they were being seen by medical professionals while they were in her care?
Correct.
Okay. And then there's been a lot of debate on Miss Bushman just taking the children off of their thickeners without any medical advice. But Respondents Exhibit 6 is a letter that the children's prior pediatrician provided. And it substantiates that Miss Bushman was advised by their doctor to take them off the thickener. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And as testified to, Miss Bushman had also set up an appointment to get Jasmine started in speech therapy?
Correct.
Okay, but the children were removed before Jasmine was able to get started in that service. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have any concerns for the children being with Miss Bushman at this time?
Not at this time.
Do you believe she's made progress in addressing the issues which led the children to be in care?
I do.
Okay. And the counselor who is seeing Miss Bushman also provided a note from April of this year. And that was her recommendation as well, that the risks have been reduced. Is that correct? And I'll screen share that for you so it's easier. In the summary of the client's participation, it states the client's ability to process and implement new information. Client appears receptive to learning new strategies on how to parent and maintain stability in their life. Changes in the client's behavior and conditions that demonstrate that problems contributing to risk have been or are in the process of being addressed, and that the risk to the children has been reduced. And then it states stability. Would you, do you have the same belief that Ms. Bushman is open and receptive to the new strategies and maintaining stability in her life?
Yes.
And in regards to Ms. Bushman's housing, she has provided you a copy of that lease, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And she's also provided you pay stubs evidencing the financial income that she has?
Correct.
Okay. And in regards to Ms. Bushman's visitation, once the children were removed at the end of December, her visitation obviously changed. It's a few hours distance from Ms. Bushman to the children. Is that correct?
Correct.
What does that visitation look like right now?
It looks like we have virtual visits, weekly virtual visits twice a week on Monday and Thursday. And we do a 2-hour visit in person. We meet in Junction, typically in Junction, Texas. And that's for 2 hours twice a month.
Okay. And has Ms. Bushman been consistent on making those visitations?
Yes, she has. She missed one virtual visit. That was it back in January.
Okay. And she's consistent on asking how the children are doing and wanting updates on the kids?
Correct.
Okay. And then in regards to the bond with the children, as you testified, the kids are bonded to her, correct?
Correct.
They don't cry when they're handed to her. She's not a stranger danger person, right?
No, she is not. Correct.
Okay. She's a person of comfort that they are very comfortable around.
Correct.
And during the visits, the kids seem happy with their mother?
Yes, they do.
I know there was an issue of Miss Bushman or allegedly having continued contact with Mr. Martin. Have you ever had that feeling?
I haven't had that. Well, I've questioned her. I've asked her before, and she's denied that she was in contact with him. And I took her word for it. I didn't have a reason not to.
Okay. Do you believe that she's had any recent contact with Mr. Martin?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And there haven't been any reports from like the courtesy worker or anyone at the sober living home that Mr. Martin's ever showed up around Miss Bushman?
Correct.
When the children were placed with Miss Bushman, she did have them in an identified daycare. To your knowledge, is that still the plan if the court were to grant the transitional monitored return?
Correct. They'd return back to Kids or Us.
Okay. And obviously she already has that pediatrician lined up in the San Angelo area where they would be seeing again, presumably?
Correct.
I will pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Pearsall, any questions?
Your Honor, I don't have any questions on the motion. However, I would like to change my announcement to not ready at this point because my client seems to have dropped off. And I called him during the break and was sent a voicemail. So I don't know what happened, but I'm going to change my announcement to not ready.
Okay. I understand now. I'm going to overrule the not ready. We're going to continue to move forward. Then Miss, I think for purposes of this hearing, how many questions do you have, Miss Harris? Is it a lot? Okay. Well, if it's a lot, then we're just going to go ahead and move in order. Then go ahead, Miss Harris.
Sorry, give me just a second to get settled. I thought that Ms. Swallow would go next.
Well, I mean, if you don't have a problem with her going next, that's fine with me.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. There's no other objection to it? Okay.
No objection.
Then Ms. Swallow, you can go next, and we're going to have about 35 minutes before we're going to have to recess.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. Ms. Powell, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I may jump around, so forgive me, okay? Have you ever met Mr. Martin in person?
No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Once.
Okay. And when was that?
It might have been, I'm not quite sure, it might have been September, October, I'm sorry, maybe August.
Okay. Did he submit to drug testing?
No, ma'am.
Did you request drug testing?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any reason to believe that he's using?
Yes,
Your
ma'am.
Honor, I'm going to object to relevance in the motion for monitor to return. It doesn't involve Mr. Martin.
Judge, may I respond?
You may.
I have questions regarding Ms. Bushman's and Mr. Martin's relationship. And I think it's important, especially if the court is contemplating putting these children back with her, that we're fully aware of all potential issues that could arise that affect the safety of these children.
Your Honor, the only testimony we've heard is that they're not in a relationship. There's no indication that they even communicate. So it's irrelevant.
Objection's overruled. I want to hear a little bit more about this.
Thank you. Ms. Powell, why is it you believe that Mr. Martin may still be actively using?
I believe in court, one of the times.
Objection, I'm going to call for speculation.
What is your answer based off, Ms. Powell?
I believe the one time he appeared in court, he stated he.
Hang on, it's based off of your direct knowledge?
Not direct knowledge. He never tested for me.
Okay, is it based off something that Mr. Martin said?
Yes.
Okay, objection's overruled. You can answer the question.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask one question on Verdire.
That's fine.
Ms. Powell, when did Mr. Martin make the statement you're referring to?
One of the times he actually appeared in court, I believe.
So when was that? That's what I'm asking.
I don't recall which hearing he appeared.
Okay, was it at the very beginning of this case?
No, ma'am.
She said she didn't know, Ms. Pearsall.
The objection's overruled. I'm going to let her answer the question.
He stated he would be willing to go to rehab.
Did he also state that he would be willing to work services once he found out that the children were biologically his?
He did.
Did you create a family plan for him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were you able to review that with him?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Has he done anything in regards to services or taken any action to engage in services as far as this case is concerned?
No, ma'am.
Were you able to communicate with him regarding the positive paternity between him and the twins?
Yes.
And did he respond to you?
Yes, he did.
Do you remember what he responded?
I don't, not right offhand.
Okay. As far as mom, the mother, Ms. Bushman, do you believe, or do you have any inclination to think that if she were in San Antonio, she would be having contact with Mr. Martin?
Objection, calls for speculation.
I asked if she had any reason to believe.
Okay, so
I join the
question
objection,
is-
Your Honor.
Okay, you may answer the question.
I believe it would have a greater chance if she was in San Antonio.
As far as Ms. Bushman's physical health, is she diabetic?
Not to my knowledge.
You know if she was compliant with her diabetes when she was pregnant?
She was not.
Do you know if that had an effect on the twins?
Objection, calls for speculation.
I'm asking if she knew, if she knows.
And a medical opinion judgment she's not qualified to give.
She could say yes or no.
I think that particular question stretches into the arena of speculation. It's the same.
Okay. As far as Ms. Bushman's need to take, I guess you said antidepressants, is that correct?
Correct.
Have you ever done a pill count?
No, ma'am.
Do you know if she's under the direction of a doctor?
MMHR.
Okay. Have you verified that?
I have not.
Do you know what other mental health needs that she has or may not have?
Only the bipolar.
Do you know whether or not she's ever been had to stay at a psychiatric facility?
As a teenager.
Okay. Do you know why?
If I recall, it might have been. I don't recall why.
You know whether or not Ms. Bushman breastfed her babies?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you know at how many weeks Ms. Bushman delivered the twins?
33.
Do you know how much they weighed?
It was less than 5 pounds.
Each?
I believe so.
Have you ever been out to Ms. Bushman's current place where she resides in person?
No, ma'am.
So arguably, there are some things, could possibly be things in the home or concerns, but you did not see because you're just following the camera where she's taking and pointing you, correct?
Objection
Correct.
argumentative.
Sustained.
Do you think it would be beneficial, Ms. Powell, to go out to her home in person?
Yes.
Were you ever able to visit her in the sober living houses?
Yes.
And isn't it true she was not evicted from one, but two?
I was only aware of Sarah. Yes. It was before I came onto the case. Yes.
Okay. Ms. Savage pulled up her, I think it was Respondents Exhibit 6, and I don't know the other one, but they were letters from the children's doctor and St. Angelo, something about the effect that she had given authority for them to stop thickeners. Do you recall seeing that?
Correct. Yes. Sorry.
Do you know if that decision, if there's any sort of consultation with the twins' current pulmonologist or other specialists that they're seeing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So technically, the doctor could have made that decision based off of any type of self-report that Ms. Bushman could have given them.
Objection, speculation.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Correct.
Ms. Powell, remember, wait for the judge to let you know whether you can answer or not.
I apologize.
So, Ms. Powell, your testimony was that there were no safety concerns for the children when they were removed from the mother in December 2023, correct?
Correct.
Where were the children placed once they were removed from the mother?
They were placed back with the Fords.
Is that where they went first?
No, ma'am.
Where did they go?
They went to David's Respite, a shelter, an emergency shelter in San Antonio.
Okay. So if you honestly believe that there were no safety concerns for the children, why wouldn't you just move Ms. Bushman to a shelter with her children? Why would you remove her children from her and put the children in a shelter?
I followed directives.
Okay. And who gave you that directive?
My supervisor.
Who's your supervisor?
Christy Knopp.
Okay. And did you all staff this case for removal?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you disagree for the reasons why the department or Belong was moving forward with the removal?
I did not.
How long have the twins been with the Fords?
From, I believe, the age of
Objection,
2
Your Honor.
months.
Relevance as to the motion on monitored return.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, Ms. Powell, you can proceed.
Okay. I'm sorry, could you ask me the question again? I apologize.
How long did children have been with the Fords?
Before the removal or in totality?
In totality.
They were with the Fords from February until October, and then again from December until now.
Okay, and how old are the twins?
17 months, I believe.
Okay. So majority of their life, they've been with the Fords so far.
Correct.
And Ms. Bushman has been involved with the department regarding these twins since their birth, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to revisit our last hearing on April 4th. And I know you've given some testimony as to why you think it's now appropriate for this monitored return with mom. However, I want to dig a little deeper as to what exactly has changed since April 4th to where 2 days before trial, the department changes their position and wants to return.
And I'm going to object to sidebar.
That's fine. I'll withdraw it. So, Ms. Powell, your testimony was that the children could not be returned because they were at risk for abuse and neglect. Has that changed?
Yes, ma'am.
What exactly has changed?
Her willingness to parent is more apparent.
Okay. And how many times have you seen her with the children since April 4th?
I saw on the 29th of April.
Okay. Is that one time?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long was that visit?
2 hours.
You also testified that Ms. Bushman had not fully addressed all the concerns that brought the children into care. Has your opinion on that changed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what has happened since April 4th that has led you to believe that mom has now addressed all the issues that have brought the children into care?
In discussing the case with Ms. Bushman, I was under the impression that she wasn't taking the medical serious. But in speaking with me, she had a plan outlined as to how she would deal with their medical issues if they were returned.
Are you concerned at all that she took these children off their thickener without consulting with their specialists?
I'm concerned that the doctor took the children off of the formula, off of the thickener without consulting.
Are you concerned that Ms. Bushman did not inquire into their current treating physicians at that time?
I don't believe she was even aware that she needed to.
Why don't you think, strike that, that's too deep. So now you believe that she understands everything?
Correct.
As far as her nail tests, do you know, were they fingernails, toenails that were taken?
Fingernails.
Do you know Ms. Bushman's alleged sobriety date?
It would be February 7th.
What year?
I'm sorry, 2023.
So if this nail test was taken February 27th, 2024, from her nails, your testimony is that that went back over a year.
There's still some debate.
Speculation and a medical conclusion.
Yeah, rephrase, sustain.
If Ms. Bushman's alleged sobriety date is February 7th, and the nail test was taken February 27th, do the results, is it your testimony that the results of the nail bed test are go back prior to her alleged sobriety date?
I'm not sure if I'm qualified to answer that.
Ms. Powell, how much experience do you have in reviewing and analyzing and interpreting nail bed tests?
I've done it before as an investigator.
Do you know whether or not Ms. Bushman still vapes inside the home?
I'm not sure if she does.
Would that be a concern if she did?
Yes, it would be.
Why?
Because of the children's chronic lung disease.
Have there been any changes to the visitation schedule since the children were removed from her care in December 2023?
Have there been any changes to the visitation schedule?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Has she shown you actual proof, valid, hard proof that her driver's license is valid?
No, she simply let me know that she'd been reinstated.
Okay. Has she shown you proof that she has valid car insurance?
She has not.
Has she shown you proof that she has appropriate car seats in place for her children?
I actually have her car seats, so she couldn't show me because I actually have the car seats.
Do you have proof that she has a reliable vehicle?
Yes, ma'am. I've seen the vehicle.
Have you, and you may have already answered this, you have not been out to her current home in person, correct?
Correct.
Do you know whether or not Ms. Bushman has ever attended any of the children's doctor's appointments in person?
She has not.
Do you believe that that is important for her to be a part of?
It is.
Okay. Do you know what the barrier is besides of just transportation, of not being able to go to any of those visits?
That was the only barrier, is transportation.
Okay. Wouldn't you agree with me, or strike that? Do you know the effects, if any, the removal of the children from the thickener had on the children's health?
I was not aware that they had any problems once removed from it.
Okay. Are you aware of any issues, if any, that the children had from a lapse in speech therapy?
I'm not aware of any issues.
Okay. Are you aware that there was a lapse in speech therapy when the children were placed with Ms. Bushman?
Yes.
Okay. How many times did you go out and visit Ms. Bushman when the children were placed with her in October 2023?
I did not. There was an LPS worker assigned to her.
Do you know how many times that LPS worker went out?
I'm not sure. I can't call it off the top of my head.
Do you know if that LPS worker went out weekly?
She should have went out weekly.
Okay, but you don't know for sure.
I can't off the top of my head call how many times she went out.
Okay. Miss Powell, have you reviewed Miss Bushman's budget?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how much does she receive a month in food stamps?
$720.
And how much is her, does she have to pay for her rent, if any?
I believe now she is slated to pay 156 now with her job at Slotsky's.
Okay. And does she have any other bills that she has to pay in the home?
No, ma'am. I believe they give her a utility stipend. She pays internet for internet service.
So technically, if this court grants this monitor return, she probably only needs part-time daycare, correct?
Possibly, yes.
Okay. So that she can actually do the hands-on work it takes to raise these children.
Correct.
Have you ever filed a visitation schedule or plan into this case?
No, ma'am.
Is there a reason why not?
I was not directed to, but it is something that we are supposed to do.
Have you ever received any sort of disciplinary action for not following the rules and guidelines pursuant to your job?
Objection relevance, Your Honor.
Objection relevance, Your Honor.
Sustained unless you can tell me why it's relevant, Ms. Swallow.
Judge, I believe that a lot of what's happened in this case is due to the inaction of the caseworker and due to Belong not doing what they were supposed to for these children. And I believe it has enabled this mother and it's put us in the position that we're in now.
Your Honor, her belief has nothing to do with the legal response to an objection.
Well, I'm asking a question to find out.
I'm going to overrule or sustain the objection, so let's move on.
Okay. Ms. Powell, do you think you could have done a better job in this case?
Objection relevance.
Sustained.
I pass the witness.
Ms. Harris, we've got about 15 minutes before we need to recess. Let's see how far we can get.
I think Ms. Swallow covered a lot of it, so I think I can probably do that. Do you know when Ms. Bushman last had contact with Mr. Martin?
No, ma'am.
Are you aware that her sobriety plan said that having contact with him might be a trigger for use, or it might be a sign?
Yes,
a
ma'am.
risk factor?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you aware she was having contact with him in December?
No, I was not aware of that.
What are the hours that Ms. Bushman works?
She tends to work 5 to, her hours vary. She works 5 to close at Slotsky's, and during the day, I believe her hours vary with dishwashing at Loretta Cafe.
So daycare would not cover when she's working at Slotsky's, correct?
Correct.
What is the plan?
She plans on quitting Slotsky's and picking up the part-time job at the cafe full-time.
And is there any reason that hasn't already occurred?
I believe she was waiting to see if the children would be returned.
So is that a reason that the children should not be moved to her immediately?
It's not a reason.
So you're not concerned that she would quit a job, rely on another job that is part-time, and still meet her and the children's needs?
There is concern there.
And have you ever done an unannounced visit at her home?
Not at her new home, no, ma'am.
All right. So your review of her home, those have all been planned?
Of the new home,
Yes.
it was
Team
planned
visits that you had,
walkthrough.
those were all planned? Okay. And was she able to show you what she's got in the home for the kids?
Yes, ma'am.
What does she have there for them?
Clothes, cribs, diapers, the basic necessities.
And it was your testimony that you've never seen her overwhelmed with the children, is that correct?
Correct.
Tell me about the visit in April.
On the 29th.
Yes, where was it? What did you do?
The visit was held in Junction at the McDonald's in Junction, Texas. Well, they're one. She fed them, she played with them, she talked to them, she sang to them. She did ask for my help when she was taking one, I believe, Jasmine, to the bathroom. She asked if I could watch one of the children because she didn't have the tandem stroller with her.
And why did she not have the tandem stroller with her?
She said that it's a difficult stroller to maneuver, so she elected not to bring it.
Is that concerning to you?
Not necessarily.
Did you ask her to bring it?
I did ask.
And she did not bring it?
And she did not.
Have you ever been able to see her navigate a full visit without assistance from somebody?
No.
And how many times has she taken a smoking education?
Twice.
And when were those?
Before the children were returned and after they were removed. And I believe they went over it in her parenting classes at Journey Recovery.
And how many sober living homes was she in before she moved where she's at?
2.
Have there been concerns about honesty?
Not necessarily.
Were there concerns about her honesty when she was at the most recent sober living home and what she was getting done for the kids?
In that aspect, yes. I found out later she was receiving support from the ladies at the facility who did not disclose that to me.
So when visits are supervised and when parents live in sober living homes, does Belong expect a parent to be able to care for their children unassisted?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you witnessed that?
I've witnessed her care for the children and asked for help when needed.
Did she ever take the children to a pulmonologist?
No, ma'am, not to the best of my knowledge.
Is that necessary since they have chronic lung disease?
Yes, ma'am.
I understand that there are perhaps some differing opinions regarding doctors and specialists and what they recommend and think in order for the children to be properly cared for. Do you think it's important for Ms. Bushman to have communication with all of them?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that something a parent should have to be told to do?
No, ma'am.
And why is it that you have her car seats right now?
Because I typically transport the children, so the car seats stay with me because of the distance.
Did you help Ms. Bushman create her budget?
I attempted to, yes.
Can you tell me what one of the concerns in this case has been proactive behavior on the part of Ms. Bushman and anticipating what her children would need? Can you tell me what recently she's done that shows proactiveness on her part?
She's shown a willingness to parent them, as I said before.
But can you specifically tell me what that is?
I didn't have to prompt her to bring diaper bags, to schedule the visits where she wanted the visit. I didn't have to prompt her to take the children to the bathroom or clean the children up. I didn't have to prompt her into doing any of that. She was proactive in doing all of that, bringing the supplies they needed.
And has she been proactive in their current medical care?
She has not. She has not been to any visits, doctor's visits.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Do you have any brief redirect, Ms. Price?
Not brief enough to finish in the time that you had indicated, Your Honor. I don't think, anyway.
Okay. All right, then we're going to recess. Does anybody have a scheduling conflict with May the 21st at 11 a.m.?
That works.
Yes, Your Honor, I do have a conflict.
All day or?
I've got an 11:30 merits and a 1 p.m. merits and then a 4 p.m. Permanency.
Going to be June 3rd.
That works.
That works, Your Honor.
Okay.
Judge, I can try to get coverage. I'll be out of the country that week. Well,
Yeah, if you could get coverage, we're going to need to move forward. I don't want to wait that long, but that's what we've got. So I don't think we would have finished today anyways with the motion. So we're going to come back on June 3rd at 9. And then if you want to send me your exhibits, everything that's been admitted, I'll start going through that stuff to expedite things.
Your Honor, and how long are they set for?
On June 3rd?
Yes.
We're going to start at 9 and go till we're done.
So potentially all day?
Potentially. I don't think we're going to need all day, but I mean, I've heard a lot of evidence today, so I'm not sure why we would need a full day, but I'm not going to put anything else on that day at this point. So June 3rd at 9 a.m.